When Jerry's wife dies, her mother arrives with a smile sharper than a knife and a list of demands. But buried beneath the grief is a truth so lethal it will turn quiet mourning into a war for justice, because the dead don't need revenge. But the living still carry the fire. The smell hit first. Carnations too many, too sweet, wilting in the hallway where the light never touched. Jerry stood in the doorway like a shadow that refused to leave, her perfume clawing through the grief-soaked air like a parasite in bloom. He hadn't invited her in. She invited herself. Her heels clicked across the wood like bone on bone. She didn't cry, not even at the urn, just stared, her lips puckered, her eyes already measuring the drapes, the chandelier, the silence. She called it our loss. But Jerry watched her eyes catalog every corner of the house, like a vulture circling meat that hadn't finished twitching. His wife hadn't been in the ground, or rather not in the ground at all, long enough for the dust to settle, but her mother came already dressed in war. She thought he was soft. He could feel it in the way she glanced at his hands, how gently he moved, like he'd break under pressure, like grief made him pliable. Jerry didn't argue. Grief does something strange to your body. It makes you slower. But inside, the silence sharpens. He offered her tea. She declined. She wanted documents. She wanted keys. She wanted to know what had been left behind. Jerry watched her pass by the photo in the hallway. One of them is at the edge of the cliff. Wind in her hair, the ocean fracturing into foam behind them. She didn't pause, didn't see it, or didn't want to. Upstairs, the door to the bedroom stayed closed. He hadn't opened it since the day she stopped breathing. She asked about the safe. Jerry didn't answer. Instead, he led her to the kitchen deliberately, slowly. The light there was weak. Afternoon was smothered in storm clouds. Windows strewn with condensation like tears no one would wipe. She trailed behind him, eyes scanning, always. Hunting, you're not strong enough for this, she murmured once. Fingers tapping the counter like she was waiting for the truth to arrive in a manila envelope. Jerry smiled and handed her a cup of tea she hadn't asked for. Drink or don't. It was all the same to him. She sat, her body barely touching the chair, legs crossed like royalty perched on ruins. You should know, she began. My daughter didn't believe in shared accounts. Everything was in her name. She said it like a warning, like a knife unsheathed, with a polite smile. But the moment she said daughter, something twitched behind Jerry's ribs. Not pain, something older, something awake. He didn't flinch. She brought out a paper. Not the will, not yet. Just a list. Items she wanted, items she knew were hers. The jewelry box, the car, and the coastal cottage. None of them had ever been visited. The teacup steamed quietly between them, a ghost warming its hands. Jerry said nothing, just looked at her, at the cold precision around her mouth, the way grief hadn't touched her eyes. And in that moment, he remembered. The night before she died, his wife took off her ring and placed it on the bedside table. Not a word, just the clank of metal against wood. Jerry thought it was exhaustion. He thought she was tired of hospitals, of wires, of waiting for news that never changed. But there was something else in the way she looked at him. I need you to be strong when I go. She didn't say it. She didn't have to. She knew what her mother was. She'd left him letters, not love. Letters, instructions, passwords, hidden things, not for sentiment, for protection. She didn't trust easily, but she trusted Jerry when she died. She took the warmth from the house, but not the fire. Are you listening to me? Her mother snapped. Her voice cut the quiet like glass through velvet. Jerry nodded, then stood, walked to the cabinet behind the fridge, pulled out a box wrapped in black tape, small, heavy, unmarked. He placed it on the table. She stared at it like it was a snake. What is that? Her last gift. Her hands hovered, but she didn't touch it. Jerry stepped back. She opened it. Inside, a letter, a flash drive, a photograph. She was a child, arms crossed, a bruise forming under one eye. Jerry watched her expression calcify, blood drained like a tide going out. Two shouldn't have this, Jerry said. Nothing. She reached for the letter. He didn't stop her. She read, and the tremble started. The letter wasn't addressed to him. It was to her. His wife's handwriting, raw and unedited, spilled secrets like blood, abuse, and manipulation. How she'd been forced to smile in family photos, to perform daughterhood under threat. How she'd promised herself she'd never let her mother win, not in life, not in death. The last line, "If you're reading this, it means he was stronger than you thought, and I chose right." The room was silent, but the storm outside began to scream. She stood slowly, stiffly, and knocked over the cup. It shattered. She left without a word. The house exhaled when the door shut, not loudly, like a bruise under bandages. Quiet, dark, honest. Jerry sat in her chair, felt its warmth disappear, and let the quiet crawl back in days past. But the silence never softened. Jerry moved through the house like a man pacing a mausoleum. Every corner of the house still wore her presence, but now it breathed differently. The air felt clearer, not lighter, but truthful. He found himself staring at the box again, the flash drive untouched. She had warned him not to trust anyone with it, not lawyers, not even friends. Jerry had always been a man of patience, but patience now felt like standing on a ledge waiting for the wind to make its choice. He plugged the drive into his laptop. The screen lit up with a single folder named for him. Inside were videos, hours of recordings. His wife thin and tired but eyes sharp, detailing accounts, transactions, properties Jerry never knew existed, all in her mother's name. All stolen under the guise of family trust. She spoke calmly, each word deliberate, every smile tinged with the weight of truth. This was not revenge, she said. This was a ledger, one she wanted balanced. Jerry watched, felt the storm in his chest build, but he did not break. He had been underestimated for too long. That night, Jerry sat in the dim light of their bedroom, letters scattered like stepping stones through memory. His wife had given him not a path to mourning, but a map to justice. The next morning, Jerry visited the bank. The manager, a friend of her mother, greeted him with a practiced smile. Jerry's hands were steady as he slid across a letter, handwritten by his wife, accompanied by a notarized document revealing account movements, some legal, most not. The man's face paled. Jerry didn't flinch. He knew silence was his sharpest tool. From the bank, Jerry moved to the lawyer's office. His wife had anticipated every move. Files locked in safe deposit boxes, recordings hidden in plain sight. She had left no gaps. Her mother had built a fortress of control, but his wife had tunneled beneath it. Piece by piece, Jerry began dismantling the empire she had hoarded, not for himself, but because he understood now. This was never about possessions. This was about voice, about reclaiming what was stolen in whispered threats and veiled smiles. One evening, as the sun fractured through the living room windows, Jerry received a call. It was her, the voice that once dripped with condescension, now cracked, brittle. "What do you want?" she asked. Jerry smiled. "I already have it." She didn't respond. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was an acknowledgement. She knew she had lost. But Jerry knew victory wasn't the end. Healing isn't loud. It creeps in through the cracks. That night, Jerry walked to the bedroom. For the first time since she passed, he opened the door. The scent of her perfume, faint but there, greeted him like a memory, willing to be gentle. He sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of loss still present but different. Not an anchor, but a compass. The house was quiet, but it was not empty. The fire she had left behind wasn't meant to destroy, it was meant to guard. Jerry knew the world outside would circle again, that vultures didn't starve easily, but he also knew that grief, when honored with truth, becomes something unbreakable. He had the match. And now, he knew exactly when to strike. The storm outside had passed, but inside, Jerry carried the thunder.